On my 64th birthday, I stood frozen as wine ran down my $3,000 dress. My daughter-in-law, Chloe, smirked and said, "Now it looks as cheap as she really is." Her mother, Brenda, watched her with pride. My son, Michael, pretended not to see, but none of them knew that night would be the breaking point. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am 64 years old. And that night, in front of 80 people who had been applauding just minutes before, I felt the red wine slowly seep down the Italian silk of my ivory-colored dress. It cost $3,000, but at that moment, I wasn't thinking about the money. I was thinking about the stifled giggles, the whispers, the cruel silence that followed the accident. Chloe, my daughter-in-law, held the empty glass with that expression I knew so well, feigned innocence. Her eyes shone with something that wasn't regret. It was triumph. Beside her, Brenda, her mother, brought a hand to her mouth as if in horror, but I saw the smile she hid behind her fingers. And Michael, my son, my only son, the child I carried in my arms, whom I defended from everything and everyone, was checking his phone, as if nothing was happening, as if his mother wasn't being humiliated at her own birthday party. The private room at the Cobalt restaurant, with its crystal chandeliers and embroidered tablecloths, became a stage for my shame. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, some with pity, others with that morbid curiosity people feel at someone else's misfortune. "Oh, Eleanor, I'm so sorry," Chloe said, using that sweet voice she reserved for audiences. "I'm so clumsy, I ruined your dress." But her next words were quieter, just for me, as she leaned in to help with a napkin. "Although, let's be honest, Eleanor, now it looks as cheap as you really are." Something inside me broke in that instant. It wasn't my heart. It was something worse. It was the last thread of illusion that kept me believing that everything was fine, that my family loved me, that I still had a place in my own life. I stood motionless, not because I was weak, but because finally, after 5 years of small humiliations, of contempt disguised as advice, of being pushed aside inch by inch from my own home, I finally saw with absolute clarity, this was not an accident. This was planned. And that night, stained with wine and shame, as everyone uncomfortably returned to their conversations, I made a decision that would change everything. But no one knew it yet. Not even I understood how far I was willing to go. Because what they didn't know was that they hadn't just ruined a dress that night, they had woken me up. If this story is touching your heart, subscribe to the channel so you can keep following along with this story. Because what's coming, nobody expected. But before I tell you how I got to that room, how I became the invisible woman at her own party, you need to understand who I was before. Before Chloe entered our lives like a silent hurricane. Before my son became a stranger. Before I lost myself. I wasn't always this woman who bows her head. There was a time when my name meant something in this city. Eleanor Vance, architect. I designed the new bank tower downtown, the public library in the suburbs, the Valley Towers residential complex that everyone knows for its vertical gardens. It was 2013 when my world fell apart. Richard, my husband, died in a crash on the interstate. A tractor trailer lost control. Rain. Fog. My husband never came home. Michael was 32 years old. He had just landed a position at a tech company. I was 52. And suddenly, we were alone. Two people trying to figure out how to keep breathing when the center of your universe disappears. For a year, I could barely work. Michael came over every evening. He brought me soup. He sat with me in silence. Sometimes we cried together. Other times we just held hands, looking at old photographs. He was my anchor, and I was his. Little by little, I returned to life. I took on a small project, then another. An international firm offered me the lead on designing a cultural center in Barcelona. A 3-year contract, good salary, the opportunity of my career. But Michael looked at me with those eyes he inherited from his father and said, "Mom, I need you close, please." I turned down Barcelona. I bought a beautiful plot of land in a leafy suburb, with jacaranda trees lining the street and a view of the hills. I invested my savings, $420,000. I hired the best architect I knew, myself. And I designed a house with 2 living rooms. One for me, Another for Michael and the family he would one day have. I wanted a multi-generational home, like in the old days, where grandmothers cook with their daughters-in-law, where grandchildren run through the yard while the adults drink coffee on the terrace. I dreamed of that as I placed every brick, every window, every detail. The house was finished in 2015. Michael moved in with me. Those were 2 beautiful years. We cooked together on Sundays. He helped me with my blueprints. I listened to him talk about his projects at the company. We had our routine, our peace. Until, in 2017, Michael met Chloe Sullivan at a business conference in Dallas. At first, I found her charming, tall, slim, with that perfect smile of someone who knows exactly how to make a good impression. She came from a good family, or so she said. Her father had been in textiles. Her mother, Brenda, was also a widow. Chloe was kind to me those first few weeks. She asked about my work. She complimented the house. She called me Eleanor, with a fake affection that I, at the time, believed was genuine. They got married in 2018, an elegant wedding in a Napa Valley garden. I paid for half, $30,000. Chloe cried with happiness in my arms. "I always wanted a mother-in-law just like you," she whispered. What an idiot I was to believe her. The first few months were tolerable. Chloe moved into the house. She respected my space, or so it seemed. But there were small changes. A painting I had hung would appear in a different spot. My spices in the kitchen were reorganized. My routines were interrupted by new traditions she imposed. "It's just how we did things at my house, Eleanor," she'd say in that soft voice. "You don't mind, do you?" And I said no. Because I wanted peace. Because I wanted Michael to be happy. Because a good mother-in-law doesn't fight over trivial things. But the trivial things became invasions. Chloe convinced Michael that I needed help. That at my age, maintaining such a large house was too much. She fired Rosa, my housekeeper of 20 years, without consulting me. She brought in a new girl, Maria, who only took orders from Chloe. Then Brenda arrived. "Just for a few days, Mom," Michael told me. "Her apartment is being remodeled." That was 3 years ago. Brenda never left. Between the two of them, they redecorated my living room, changed the curtains, moved furniture. They installed security cameras that, curiously, only monitored my spaces, my studio, my bedroom, the garden where I used to drink my coffee. And Michael, my son, became a ghost. He left early, came home late. When I tried to talk to him, he was always in a hurry. "I have a meeting." "Later." "Mom, don't start," he'd say whenever I mentioned anything. "Chloe is just trying to help. Why are you always looking for problems?" That's how I became invisible. Not all at once, but little by little. Like those old photos that fade in the sunday, until one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the woman looking back. But that night of the spilled wine, something changed. Because when you hit rock bottom, there are only 2 options. Stay there or start digging your way out. And I had already decided which one I would choose. Let me tell you how I lost my own house without even realizing it. Because that's the most dangerous thing about manipulation. It doesn't arrive shouting. It arrives with smiles, with advice, with feigned concern that disarms you. 3 months after the wedding, Chloe suggested changing the living room furniture. "It just looks so old, Eleanor. You deserve something more modern." Michael agreed. I gave in. After all, they were just details. Or so I thought. Then it was the kitchen. Chloe couldn't stand my ceramic pots, my casserole dishes inherited from my mother. They take up so much space, and they're so old-fashioned. She replaced them with stainless steel cold, with no history, no soul. Every change came wrapped in reasonable logic. Every invasion disguised as an improvement. But the real blow came when she fired Rosa. Rosa had worked with me since Michael was a teenager. She knew my routines. She knew I liked my coffee strong at 7, that on Fridays I baked pastries. She was more than an employee. She was a confidant, a friend. One afternoon, I came home from work, and Rosa was gone. Chloe was waiting for me in the kitchen with a smile. I gave her severance, Eleanor. It was just too much work for a woman her age. I hired Maria. She's younger, more efficient. Without consulting me, I could barely process what I was hearing. "You're always so busy. I didn't want to bother you with these domestic things." Michael agreed. There it was again. Michael agreed. As if that phrase was a shield that justified anything. I called Rosa that night. She cried on the phone. She told me Chloe had given her only the bare legal minimum, that she had forbidden her from saying goodbye to me. I wanted to fix it, to pay her more, to bring her back, but Rosa had already accepted another job. The damage was done. Maria, the new housekeeper, wouldn't look me in the eye. She only followed Chloe's instructions. If I asked for something, she would first check with Mrs. Sullivan, as if I were a guest in my own home. Then Brenda arrived. Chloe's mother showed up with 3 suitcases. "Just while my apartment is being remodeled," they said. That was in October of 2020. We are now in 2023, and she is still here. Brenda settled into the guest room I had designed for friends. She decorated it to her taste, put up her saints, her candles. Her smell of cheap perfume permeated the entire hallway. Between the two of them, mother and daughter, they established new rules. I could no longer use the living room after 9 o'clock in the evening because Brenda was watching her soap operas. My music was too loud. My friends were no longer welcome because they disturbed the peace of the home. One day, I returned from a client meeting to find my studio reorganized. My blueprints, my sketches from 30 years of my career, were in boxes. Chloe had turned half the space into a yoga room. "You hardly ever use it, Eleanor, and I need a place to meditate." I felt like a piece of my soul was being torn out. That studio was my sanctuary. The place where Richard and I had spent nights designing together, where every wall held memories. "Michael," I told him that night, "this isn't right. That's my workspace." He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Mom, you have the whole house. Can't you share one room? Chloe is just trying to be healthy." Support her. Support her. As if I were the problem. As if asking for respect in my own home was selfish. The security cameras were the last straw before the birthday. "Chloe installed them for protection," she said. There had been break-ins in the neighborhood. It sounded logical, but the cameras only pointed at my zones. My entrance, my garden, the hallway to my bedroom. None in Chloe's or Brenda's areas. When I asked why, Chloe smiled. "It's just that you're getting older, Eleanor. If something happens to you, we need to know. It's for your own good." For my own good. Everything was for my own good. While they controlled every inch of my life, I stopped inviting friends over because Chloe always found a way to make them uncomfortable. I stopped cooking because Maria already handles that. I stopped playing music because it bothered them. I stopped existing in my own home. And Michael, my son, had become a stranger who only showed up to eat, sleep, and defend his wife's every decision. He worked late. Weekends were full of commitments. The few times I tried to speak to him alone, Chloe always interrupted. "Honey, I need you. You know how your mom gets when she feels lonely." As if I were a burden, a nuisance, a problematic old woman who needed supervision. There were days when I walked through my own house and felt like a ghost. Invisible. Silent. Without a voice or a vote. Until that birthday night, when the wine ran down my dress and Chloe's words cut through me like knives. When I finally understood that this wasn't carelessness, it was a plan to erase me, to take everything, to eliminate me without anyone even noticing I had ever been alive. But they made one mistake. They underestimated me. They thought that because I was quiet, I was defeated. They thought that because I smiled, I was stupid. And that night, stained with wine and contained rage, I woke up. Because a woman who built buildings with her own hands doesn't crumble that easily. She just needs to remember who she was before they told her who she had to be. That night, after the wine incident, I didn't go right back to the room. I couldn't. My legs were shaking. My chest burned with a mix of humiliation and something darker. Something that had been building for years. I went out to the restaurant's garden. There were lanterns hanging from the trees. Soft music drifted from the ballroom. The cool air hit my face, and only then did I allow myself to breathe. I took off my shoes. The grass was damp under my feet. The ruined dress clung to my skin. $3,000 turned into a stained rag. But I didn't care about the dress anymore. I cared about the venom in Chloe's smile. the complicity in Brenda's eyes, the cowardly silence of my son. I sat on a bench hidden among the bushes. I needed a few minutes before I went back to pretending everything was fine, before smiling and giving thanks for a party that had turned into my public funeral. Then I heard them. Female voices coming from the outdoor restroom, near where I was. The window was slightly open. I recognized those laughs immediately. "Did you see her face?" Chloe's voice was brimming with satisfaction. I thought she was going to burst into tears right there. "You went too far, honey." It was Brenda, but she didn't sound angry. She sounded proud. Although I'll tell you, the dress thing was brilliant. $3,000 down the drain. She needed to look exactly like what she is, a ridiculous old woman playing at being important. My heart stopped. It wasn't an accident. I knew it, but hearing it confirmed was something else. "And Michael?" Brenda asked. "Michael does what I say. You should know that by now, Mom," Chloe laughed. "I tell him his mother is delicate, that she needs protection, and he signs whatever I put in front of him. Is everything ready for the trust?" A trust. That word hit me like a bullet. "Almost," Chloe replied. "Michael's lawyer already prepared the documents. We just need the old woman to sign. We'll tell her it's to protect her assets in case she loses her mental faculties, that it's normal at her age. And she'll sign? Of course she'll sign. Especially after tonight, after seeing that no one respects her anymore. She'll be so broken she'll sign anything just to get a little affection back from her son." The air caught in my throat. "And after?" Brenda insisted. "After, Mom, that house is worth over $4 million. Once it's in the trust and we have control as administrators, we can sell our part. Michael will inherit the other half when she dies, but by then, we'll be settled in Florida. That condo overlooking the ocean we saw, can you imagine? Ingenious, honey. Although sometimes I think, isn't it a bit much? The poor woman is already finished." "The poor woman," Chloe repeated mockingly, "has been in our way long enough. Her time is over. Now it's our turn to live well." They laughed, both of them, as if they had just told a joke, as if I were a minor obstacle on their path to a comfortable life. I remained paralyzed on that bench, the damp dress, my bare feet on the grass. But something inside me ignited. It wasn't pain. It was absolute clarity. Everything made sense. The cameras monitoring my movements. Chloe's hurry to isolate me from my friends. The constant insinuations about my age, my memory, my forgetfulness. They were building a case, preparing the ground to declare me incompetent. The trust was the final trap, and I had been about to walk right into it. I heard them fixing themselves in the mirror, still laughing. Then their footsteps, heading back to the party. I stayed there, I don't know for how long, 5 minutes, maybe 20, watching the restaurant lights, hearing the music, feeling something ancient awaken in my chest. Rage. But not just any rage. It was the cold rage of a woman who was an architect, who had raised structures from nothing, who knows how to plan, who understands that before you build, you must have a solid foundation. I went back to the ballroom. Chloe and Brenda were already at our table, talking with other guests. Michael was still on his phone. No one had noticed my absence. I approached Chloe. I touched her shoulder gently. "Chloe, honey," I said, with the sweetest voice I could fake, "don't worry about the dress. It was an accident. These things happen." She looked at me, surprised. She had expected yelling. She expected drama. I gave her submission. Or so she thought. "Oh, Eleanor, you're so sweet. I really am so sorry." "I know, dear. I know." I smiled. "Let's just forget it. It's my birthday. I want everyone to be happy." Brenda looked at me with that expression of poorly disguised triumph. Michael finally looked up, nodding in relief, as if I had just solved a problem. The rest of the night passed with empty congratulations and hypocritical hugs. I cut the cake. I blew out the candles. I thanked everyone for coming. I acted like the sweet grandmother they thought they had domesticated. But inside, behind that smile, I was already drawing blueprints, calculating, measuring. Because that's what architects do. They build. They don't just lash out and knock things down. And they had just handed me the complete map of their plan, a grave error. Because now, I had a plan too. And unlike theirs, mine didn't depend on manipulating anyone. It depended on the truth. And the truth, when revealed at the right moment, can destroy empires built on lies. That night, driving home in the back seat, I made a decision. I was not going to sign any papers. I was not going to remain invisible. I was going to fight. But not in the way they expected, not with yelling or scenes. I was going to fight like an intelligent woman who knows that the best revenge isn't noise. It's the calculated silence before the final strike. The next 3 days were the hardest of my life. Because I had to pretend. I had to act as if I knew nothing while my world was crumbling inside. Every time I saw Chloe, I heard her voice in that bathroom. A ridiculous old woman playing at being important. Every time Brenda offered me coffee, I remembered, the poor woman is already finished. And Michael. My God, Michael. Every time I looked at him, I wondered at what point I had lost my son. At what point his love turned into indifference, disguised as being busy. On the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to someone who truly knew me, someone who remembered the Eleanor from before. I called Arthur Cohen. Arthur had been my partner on 3 major projects during the 1990s. He was an architect too, specialized in restoring historic buildings. He was 71 now, a widower for 5 years. We had drifted apart a bit after Richard died. Not because of any fight, but because life simply took us down different paths. But I knew I could trust him. We agreed to meet at an old-school cafe downtown. It's that old place where the waiters wear vests and the tiles tell 100-year-old stories. I got there early. I ordered a spiced coffee. My hands were trembling around the mug. Arthur arrived with his carved wooden cane and that warm smile he always had. Eleanor. He hugged me tightly. How long has it been? You look tired. I'm destroyed, Arthur. And right there, in that cafe full of tourists and office workers, I told him everything. The spilled wine, the conversation I overheard, the trust, the invasion of my house, how I had lost everything without even realizing it. Arthur listened to me in silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. When I finished, he stared into his cup for a long time. Eleanor, you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you. My stomach clenched. But you need to know. He took a deep breath. I looked up your daughter-in-law when you told me years ago that Michael was getting married. I had a gut feeling. I should have told you then, but I didn't want to meddle in your family life. What did you find? Chloe Sullivan was married before, out in Phoenix, to a 62-year-old businessman. She was married to him for 2 years. When they divorced, there was a lawsuit. He accused her of financial coercion, of manipulating him into signing assets over to her. The case never went to trial. They signed a confidential settlement. He paid her $80,000 to go away and never talk about it. I felt nauseous. Arthur, why didn't you tell me? Because I had no solid proof. Because it could have been a coincidence. Because your son seemed happy, and I didn't want to be the old meddler. He took my hand. But now, hearing this, I see the pattern. This woman is a professional predator, and you are her biggest target yet. Tears welled up without permission. All this time I thought it was my fault, that I was being difficult, that I didn't know how to be a good mother-in-law. But no, I was the prey. You need legal help, Eleanor. Serious help. Do you know someone? I know the best. Jessica Reed. She specializes in family estate cases and financial abuse against seniors. She is relentless. If anyone can help you, it's her. 2 days later, I was in Jessica Reed's office. A modern office in a Century City high-rise, 14th floor, with a view of the entire city, and eyes that pierced right through you when she spoke. Mrs. Vance, tell me everything. And I mean everything. Every detail matters. I showed her documents, bank statements. I managed to print in secret the deeds to the house. I told her about the cameras, about Rosa, about the trust they wanted me to sign. Jessica took notes. Do you have joint accounts with your son? Yes, a savings account we opened years ago. He has access to it. Have you noticed any strange movements? I haven't checked. I trust Michael. A big mistake. Her tone wasn't cruel, just direct. I need you to authorize me to review all your accounts. Now, I signed the authorization. She made a few calls. In less than an hour, she had the transactions from the last 3 years displayed on her computer. And there it was. The horror, in numbers. Withdrawals of $5,000, $8,000, $12,000, always on odd dates. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Payments for credit cards that weren't mine. Mrs. Vance, almost $89,000. Did you authorize these movements? No, I didn't even know. This is misappropriation, financial abuse, and we have documentary proof. Jessica kept digging. She found receipts, one in Chloe's name for a car I never saw, for $38,500. Another for a business trip to Cancun, for $9,500, purchases at department stores. Jewelry, clothing, all paid for with my money, without my knowledge. Furthermore, Jessica continued, if they try to make you sign a trust alleging mental incapacity, we need to countersue. Do you have any actual cognitive issues? None. My doctor can confirm it. Perfect. Get a full evaluation. That way, we'll have documentation that you are in full command of your faculties. That destroys any attempt to declare you incompetent. And what do we do about the stolen money? A civil suit. We're going to get back every penny, but that takes time. Jessica leaned forward. Mrs. Vance, I need you to understand something. This battle will be ugly. Your son is going to have to choose a side, and it might not be yours. At least not at first. The words hurt, but I knew she was right. Are you willing to see this through to the end? Jessica asked. I thought of the spilled wine, the cruel laughter, my invaded home, my son turned stranger, of years of silent humiliation. To the end, I replied. Even if it costs me everything. Jessica smiled. It was a smile I hadn't seen in years. An ally. Someone on my side. Then let's begin. They made a mistake. They underestimated the architect. I left that office a different woman. I was no longer the scared victim. I was the strategist, the builder of plans. Chloe and Brenda had unknowingly declared war, and I had just recruited my general. Because in architecture, there's a golden rule. You never build on unstable ground. First, you have to remove all the rotten earth. And that, exactly that, was what I was about to do. I returned home that afternoon like an actress preparing for the role of her life. Jessica had given me clear instructions. Do not change your behavior. If anything, be more compliant. The more confident they are, the more mistakes they'll make. So, that's what I did. I arrived with grocery bags. I greeted Brenda, who was watching her soap opera. I offered her cookies. She barely looked at me. Oh, Eleanor, how thoughtful. Though you know I can't have flour. My sugar, remember? I smiled. Chloe arrived from her Pilates class. She was wearing brand-name workout gear and that smile of someone who just spent money they didn't earn. Eleanor, can we talk? I have something important. My heart sped up, but I kept calm. Of course, dear. What is it? We sat in the living room. My living room, which now had furniture I didn't choose and pillows I didn't buy. Michael and I have been thinking. She paused dramatically. At your age, managing finances can be stressful. What if we put the house in a trust? That way, you don't have to worry about a thing. We'll take care of everything. There it was. The trap. Served on a silver platter. A trust? I feigned confusion. I don't really understand those legal things. Exactly. That's why it's perfect. Chloe leaned in, taking my hand with that phoniness I knew so well. It's to protect you. Imagine if someone tried to scam you, or if you, by accident, signed something you shouldn't. With the trust, we make sure no one takes advantage of you. I wanted to rip my hand away. I wanted to scream that I knew everything. But Jessica was right. I needed more proof, more mistakes on their part. It sounds complicated. Is Michael on board with this? It was his idea, Eleanor. He's very worried about you. A lie. It was all a lie. But I nodded like the naive old woman she believed me to be. Let me think about it, dear. It's a big decision. I saw the flash of frustration in her eyes, but she masked it quickly. Of course, of course. Take your time. Although, the notary already has everything prepared. We just need your signature. They already had it all ready. How efficient. The next few days were psychological torture. But I had my own weapons. I followed Jessica's advice and hired a trusted technician. We installed hidden cameras in strategic places. In my studio, where Chloe kept going without permission. In the kitchen, I carried a tiny digital recorder in my purse. I had it with me always, and I began to document everything. Every slight, every humiliation, every invasion. One afternoon, Chloe walked into my bedroom without knocking. I was changing. She didn't care. "Oh, sorry, Eleanor. I just need that necklace I borrowed from you." "Where do you keep it?" "I didn't lend you any necklace, Chloe." "The pearl one. Did you forget already?" I froze. Richard had given me that necklace for our 20th anniversary. I would never lend it out. "It should be in my jewelry box," I said, my voice trembling. Chloe went straight to it, took out the necklace, put it on in front of the mirror. "Ah, yes, this one. Perfect for the dinner tomorrow. I'll give it back to you on Thursday." And she left. Her theft, disguised as a loan. My forgetfulness. Another night, I heard voices in Richard's study. That sacred space no one had touched since his death. I went downstairs silently. The door was ajar. Chloe was photographing documents with her phone. Papers from his desk. Old files. She was looking for something. "What are you doing?" My voice came out firmer than I expected. She wasn't startled. No shame, no apologies. "Just tidying up, Eleanor. This room is a disaster. It's time to let it go, don't you think? Richard is gone. Clinging to the past isn't healthy." Every word was a stab. "This room stays as it is. Oh, Eleanor," her tone changed. It became cold, sharp. "You don't get to decide those things anymore. This is Michael's home now, and mine. It's time for you to accept your place." "My place?" "Yes, as a guest. As the grandmother who lives here out of our generosity." She stepped closer to me. "Because let's be honest, Eleanor, you don't own anything anymore. You just haven't realized it yet." She looked at me with such contempt that I felt the air leave my lungs. "This isn't yours. This space isn't yours. Your time is over. Now it's our turn. And the sooner you accept that, the less painful this will be." She walked out of the study, leaving me there, shaking with rage and pain. But what Chloe didn't know was that the hidden camera on the bookshelf had recorded every word, every gesture, every threat. I kept gathering evidence. Jessica showed me the accounts. We discovered more charges. A $3,500 laptop. Beauty treatments for $4,800. Furniture for an apartment I didn't know, for $12,700. "They're preparing their nest," Jessica told me. "They already have another place. They're just waiting to fleece you completely before they leave." I also discovered something about Brenda. Jessica hired a private investigator. She had gambling debts, online casinos, sports betting. She owed $32,000 to loan sharks. That's why she was living in my house. Not because her apartment was being remodeled, but because she had no apartment. She had lost it 6 months before she temporarily moved in with me. It was all a lie. Every word, every smile, every poisoned Eleanor. But I kept acting. I made coffee. I cleaned, even though Maria was there. I smiled at dinners. I asked how their day was. And they, confident, let their guard down. One night, I heard them in the garden. Brenda was smoking. Chloe was drinking wine. I was in my room, but the window was right above them, and the recorder was on. "How long do you think until she signs?" Brenda asked. "Not long. I've got her right where I want her. She's scared, alone. Every day I see her getting smaller, more defeated. And what if she refuses?" "She won't refuse. We'll tell her that if she doesn't sign, Michael will think she doesn't trust him. That'll destroy her. She'll sign. And as soon as we have control, we sell. I already have 2 interested buyers. The house is easily worth $4,500,000 right now. We split it, and we're gone. And Michael? Michael does what I say. He always has." She laughed. It's so easy to manipulate men when they think they're the ones making the decisions. I just wish she'd fall down the stairs and solve the problem faster. Brenda laughed too. That sentence, that damned sentence was recorded in perfect audio. The next day, I called Jessica. I have everything, I told her. Every word, every lie, every threat. Perfect. Then it's time. Are you ready, Mrs. Vance? I looked out the window. I saw Chloe in the garden, watering plants I had planted, in soil I had paid for, in a home I had built. I'm ready, I replied. Let the real game begin. Because I had already played at being invisible, I had already played at being weak. Now, I was going to play by my own rules. And in this game, I knew every corner of the board because I had designed it. 2 more weeks of simulation passed. 2 weeks where every day it cost me more to maintain the mask. But Jessica insisted. We need them to feel completely secure, to make the definitive mistake. And they made it. It was a Tuesday night. Michael came home early from work, which was rare. He asked me to sit down with him. Chloe and Brenda were there too, like vultures waiting for their feast. Mom, we need to talk about your future. My son wouldn't even look me in the eye. He had papers in his hands, legal documents. My future? I kept my tone soft, innocent. Chloe and I have noticed some concerning things. He paused. You forget conversations. You repeat questions. The other day, you left the stove on. Ali, I never left the stove on. But I said nothing. Mom, it's not your fault. It's age. It happens to everyone. But we have to protect you. Protect your assets. Chloe moved closer, placing the papers on the table. It's the trust we talked about, Eleanor. It's all ready. We just need your signature. It's for your own good. So no one can take advantage of you. The irony burned my throat. But I feel fine. I haven't forgotten anything. Mom, this is how it starts. Michael finally looked at me. Look, I'll take care of everything. You just live peacefully, without worries. Isn't that what you want? What I wanted was to have my son back, but the man sitting in front of me was a stranger. I need time to think about it. You've had time. Chloe's voice changed, hardened. We've been talking about this for weeks. Why are you resisting so much? Don't you trust your own son? There it was, the direct manipulation. Of course I trust Michael. Then sign. Let me review the documents calmly. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. I saw the fury flash in Chloe's eyes, but she controlled herself. Fine, Eleanor, but this can't wait much longer. I didn't sleep that night. I knew the moment was approaching, that I couldn't keep putting it off. The next day, Michael left early. Chloe and Brenda went to the spa. I took the opportunity to call Jessica. They've cornered me to sign. I can't avoid it anymore. Perfect. It's time to act. Can you be at my office tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? What for? For the definitive meeting. Invite Michael, Chloe, and Brenda. Tell them you're going to sign, that you want to do it with a notary present, so everything is legal. I'll handle the rest. Are you sure? Mrs. Vance, you hired the best. Trust me. When they got home, I gave them the news. Chloe nearly jumped for joy. Oh, Eleanor, I knew you'd understand. Tomorrow at 4 then. At the lawyer's office that handles these things. Yes. I want Michael to be there. And you two as well. It's important for me that my family is present. Of course. We're a family, aren't we? Chloe hugged me. She smelled of expensive perfume, bought with my money. That night, I sat alone in Richard's study. I touched his books, his old blueprints, the photographs of us young, dreaming up buildings. Forgive me, my love, I whispered. Forgive me for letting this go so far, for being so blind. But tomorrow, I fight. For us, for what we built. Wednesday morning was eternal. Chloe and Brenda were euphoric. They talked about trips, about plans, about the house in Florida they could almost touch. Michael arrived at 3. He had dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired. Part of me still wanted to save him, but I knew that was up to him. We arrived at Jessica's office at 4 o'clock sharp. Modern office, panoramic view, formal atmosphere. Jessica greeted us with cold professionalism. Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Reed. Mrs. Vance, family, please come in. We sat in the conference room. There was another person there, an older man with a briefcase. This is Mr. Hernandez, a public notary. He is here to witness whatever is signed today. Chloe smiled. Brenda too. Michael just nodded, anxious to get this over with. Jessica placed a folder on the table. Before we proceed with any signatures, I need to clarify a few legal points. Mrs. Vance, did you request the creation of this trust? No. It was proposed to me. Do you feel you are in full command of your mental faculties? Completely. Have you been evaluated recently? I took the documents the neuropsychologist had given me 3 days prior from my bag. Full evaluation. Result: cognitive faculties perfect for my age. Jessica reviewed them. She passed them to the notary. Perfect. So, Mrs. Vance is fully capable of making her own decisions. She looked at Michael, which makes certain financial movements, made without her authorization, rather problematic. What are you talking about? Michael frowned. Jessica opened the folder. She pulled out bank statements, receipts, bank documents. I'm talking about $89,000 withdrawn from the joint account you share with your mother, without her authorization. I'm talking about purchases made with supplemental credit cards that she never approved. I'm talking about transfers to third-party accounts. Chloe turned pale. Brenda went rigid. That was for house expenses, Chloe stammered. Is a $38,500 car a house expense? A $9,500 trip to Cancun? Beauty treatments for $4,800? Jessica laid the receipts on the table, one by one. All documented, all traceable. Michael authorized those expenses, Chloe said, her voice rising. Michael has access to the account, but he does not have the legal authority to spend without the consent of the primary account holder. And the primary holder is Mrs. Vance. Jessica turned to me. Did you authorize these expenses? No. I didn't even know about them. Mom, you told me to use the account for whatever we needed, Michael said desperately. For emergencies, son. For the house. Not for luxury cars and trips. Not to steal. I'm not stealing. Jessica held up a hand. There's more. She looked at Chloe. Mrs. Sullivan, were you aware that a confidential settlement agreement exists, signed in Phoenix in 2015, where your ex-husband accused you of financial coercion? The silence was absolute. Michael turned to look at Chloe, confusion on his face. What is she talking about? It's a lie, Chloe whispered. That's private. It was private, Jessica said, pulling out more documents. Until an identical pattern began here. Isolate the victim, control the finances, prepare property transfer documents, fabricate mental incapacity. This is ridiculous. Chloe stood up. Sit down. Jessica's voice was steel. I'm not finished. She took out her laptop, turned it to face us. She pressed play on a video. It was the recording from the hidden camera. Chloe in Richard's study. Her exact words. This is Michael's home now. And mine. You don't own anything anymore. Michael stared, frozen, at the screen. Jessica played another audio file. The garden conversation. Chloe's voice. It's so easy to manipulate men when they think they're the ones making the decisions. And then, Brenda's voice. I just wish she'd fall down the stairs and solve the problem faster. Michael's face crumpled. I watched something break in his eyes, as if he were finally waking up from a long dream. This can't be real, he mumbled. It's very real. Jessica closed the laptop. And it's sufficient evidence for a lawsuit for financial abuse, coercion, and threats. Chloe was livid. Brenda was crying silently. Michael, honey, I can explain. Chloe tried to grab his arm. He pulled away as if she were on fire. How much? He asked me, his voice broken. How much did we steal from you? Almost $89,000. Documented. My son put his hands to his face. His shoulders shook. My God, Mom. I didn't know, I thought. I thought you were unwell, that you needed help. That's what she wanted you to think, son, Jessica continued, relentless. Mrs. Vance, do you wish to proceed with the lawsuit? I looked at Chloe. She no longer had that smirk. She no longer had that power. She was just a scared woman, trapped in her own lies. I looked at Brenda, weeping, knowing her debts would now be public. And I looked at Michael, my son, my only son, destroyed. Yes, I am proceeding with the lawsuit. But not against my son. Against her. I pointed at Chloe. And I want every penny back. Jessica nodded. And there's one more thing. She looked at me. What do you wish to do with the house? I took a deep breath. This was the most painful part. I built that house, with my money, for my family. But there's no family there anymore. There's only poison, so I'm selling, and no one will keep anything of what was ours. Michael looked at me, tears streaming. Mom, please. Son, I love you. I will always love you. But I need to get away from this pain. And you need to decide who you want to be. The man your father would have been proud to know, or the puppet of a woman who only used you. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice was firm. I am not signing any trust. I am getting my dignity back, and you are all going to learn that women my age are not easy prey. We are survivors, and when they knock us down, we get back up, with everything we have. I walked out of that office with Jessica by my side. I left behind a screaming Chloe, a sobbing Brenda, a shattered Michael, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt like I could breathe. The following days were controlled chaos. Jessica acted with surgical precision. She froze all the joint accounts. She revoked the powers of attorney they had made me sign months before under the pretext of streamlining paperwork. She filed the civil suit for misappropriation of funds and financial coercion. It all happened so fast that Chloe had no time to react. I returned to the house that night. Michael wasn't there. Chloe and Brenda were gone too. The empty house felt strange, like a museum of a life that no longer existed. I sat in the kitchen. I made coffee, the same coffee Rosa used to make, and I cried. I cried for everything I had lost, for my son, for the wasted years, for the family that never was. But I also cried with relief, because I had finally said enough. Michael arrived around midnight. He looked devastated. Red eyes, wrinkled clothes. He sat across from me without saying a word. The silence lasted for long minutes. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know, son. I thought I was doing the right thing. Chloe kept telling me you were forgetting things, that you were confused. I just wanted to protect you. And why did you never ask me? Why did you never talk to me directly?" He broke down. The tears streamed down his face, because it was easier to believe her than to face the fact that my mom was getting older, because I was afraid of losing you like I lost Dad. And she used that fear. She twisted it. "Michael, I'm not senile. I'm perfectly fine. But you chose not to see it. I know that now. God, I know." He covered his face. "I saw the videos. I heard the audio. Every word she said about you. About me. How she laughed at how easy I was to manipulate. Where is she?" "She's gone. Her and Brenda. They packed and left. Before she left, she told me." His voice broke again. "She told me I was a mediocre failure, that you were right about me, that I was a useful idiot." It hurt to see him like that. But I also knew this pain was necessary. It was the price of waking up. "And what are you going to do now?" "I don't know." He looked at me. "Will you ever forgive me?" The question weighed a ton. "Michael, I love you. You're my son. And you always will be. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And it definitely doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. I understand. I need space. I need to heal. And you need to work on yourself. To understand how you got here. Why you let this happen. I'm starting therapy. I already made the appointment." I nodded. "It was a start. The house is being sold, Michael. That decision hasn't changed." "I know. And that's fine. You're right. This place isn't a home anymore. It's a battlefield." We spent the rest of the night in silence, sometimes crying, sometimes just sitting, facing each other, processing the rubble of what we once were. 3 weeks later, Jessica called me to her office. I have news. Chloe tried to forge your signature on documents to sell the property. The notary she hired realized it and reported it. She's now facing charges for attempted fraud. Criminal charges? Yes. And the civil suit is moving forward. We've managed to trace exactly where every penny went. We have a solid case. They're going to have to pay it all back. And Brenda? Her debts came to light. The loan sharks are after her. She's lost her entire social circle. Nobody wants anything to do with her. It was justice, but it felt empty. Because justice doesn't return lost time. It doesn't erase the wounds. And what happens to me now? Jessica smiled. Now, Mrs. Vance, you rebuild. On your own terms. The house sold 2 months later for $4,380,000. A good price, a young family with children. It gave me some peace to know that space would have genuine laughter in it again. Michael asked for nothing from that money. He signed a waiver of any claim. It's yours, Mom. It always was. We recovered the $89,000 that was stolen. Ingrid had to sell the car, return jewelry, and liquidate assets to pay. She didn't go to jail for the fraud, but the criminal charge stayed on her record. Her reputation was destroyed. Michael moved into a small apartment. He started therapy twice a week. He called me every Sunday. Short, awkward conversations at first, but honest. And me, I did something I never imagined. I bought a loft in the River North neighborhood, a restored building from the 1940s. High ceilings, enormous windows, natural light all day. It cost me $1,850,000, perfect for a single woman who needed a fresh start. The first thing I did was set up my architecture studio. Large drafting tables, new computers, a library with all my books, my old blueprints on the walls. Then I called 3 young architects, fresh out of college. I offered them mentorship, workspace, and real projects. Why us? One of them asked me. Danielle, 26 years old, eyes bright with ambition, because I know what it's like to feel like your voice doesn't matter. And I want to make sure you never feel that way. We took a project, renovating a public school in a low-income neighborhood. It didn't pay much, but it was important, real, with purpose. I woke up every morning with an energy I thought I'd lost. I worked, I designed, I taught. I went back to being Eleanor Vance, architect. Not just someone's mom, not just someone's victim, me. Whole. For the first time in years, I reconnected with Sylvia, my lifelong friend, the one Chloe had managed to push away with her manipulations. We met at a cafe. We cried. We laughed. We told stories. I missed you so much, she said, but I knew you had to find your way out alone. Well, I found it. And it has a view of the city skyline. Arthur also became part of my new routine. Coffee on Wednesdays. Art exhibits on Saturdays. It wasn't romance. It was genuine companionship, conversations with no hidden agenda, no manipulation. Just 2 older people enjoying the life they had left. One Sunday, 6 months after the sale, Michael came to visit. He brought flowers, sunflowers, my favorite. I'd forgotten you liked these. The place is beautiful, Mom. Thank you, Son. We toured the loft. I showed him my projects. He told me about his therapy, about how he was learning to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation, to not be afraid of being alone. Do you think, someday, we can, be a family again? He asked, his voice thick with fragile hope. I sat across from him. I really looked at him. I saw the man he was, not the boy he had been. Michael, we are family. We always will be. But the family we were doesn't exist anymore. It died along with the trust. What we can build now is something new, something different. Something based on mutual respect, not obligation. How do I do that? With actions, son, not with words. Words are cheap. Deeds build bridges, and those bridges take time. He nodded. He understood. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Real maturity. Before he left, he hugged me, tight, like when he was a boy and had nightmares. I love you, Mom, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve your forgiveness. You don't need my forgiveness, son. You need your own." I watched him leave, walk down the street, disappear into the downtown crowd, and I breathed, deeply, freely. That night I sat on my terrace. The sun was setting behind the buildings. The city glowed with orange light. I had a coffee in my hands, soft music in the background. And for the first time in 5 years I felt at home, not in a place, but in myself. Because that's what I had gotten back. Not a property, not money. I had gotten myself back. The Eleanor who designed buildings, who dreamed big, who didn't ask permission to exist, and that woman, that 64-year-old architect who had survived betrayal, manipulation, and loss, was ready to build her greatest work yet. The rest of her life. 8 months passed since that meeting in Jessica's office. 8 months where everything changed in ways I never imagined. The civil suit ran its course. Slow, like everything legal in this country, but Jessica was relentless. Every hearing, every presentation of evidence was another blow against the castle of lies Chloe had built. At the 3rd hearing, the judge reviewed the recordings. I watched his expression change as he heard that phrase. I just wish she'd fall down the stairs and solve the problem faster. "This isn't just misappropriation," the judge said. "This is premeditation of harm. This borders on criminal." Chloe tried to defend herself. She hired an expensive lawyer, argued the recordings were illegal, that I had provoked her, that it was all a family misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, receipts, emails where she gave Michael instructions on how to convince your mother she can't handle her finances anymore. Text messages with Brenda planning the sale of the house. All documented, all irrefutable. Michael's divorce was fast, no children involved, no real shared assets. Chloe asked for alimony. The judge denied her. "You are perfectly capable of working, Mrs. Sullivan, and frankly, your conduct in this case does not merit any compensation." I saw Chloe leave that courtroom. She was no longer the elegant woman with the calculated smile. Her hair was unkempt. Normal clothes, no designer labels. Deep dark circles under her eyes. The mask had fallen completely. For a moment, just one moment, I felt pity. But then I remembered her words. I remembered every humiliation, every lie, and the pity evaporated. Brenda's was the saddest case. Her debts caught up with her. The loan sharks sued. She had to declare bankruptcy. Her social circle, those friends she played cards with and bragged to about her successful daughter, turned their backs on her. She ended up living in a rooftop room in a rough part of town. Alone. Without the comforts she had enjoyed in my house for 3 years. Arthur told me he saw her once at the market, carrying heavy bags. She looked 10 years older. "Did you feel anything?" he asked me. "I felt that everyone reaps what they sow," I replied. But the hardest part was Michael, because with him there was no clear-cut justice, only consequences. He lost his job. The company felt the family scandal reflected poorly on their image. Conflict of interest, they told him. They fired him with minimum severance. He had to sell his car, move to a cheaper apartment, adjust to a life he didn't know, the life of someone starting from the bottom again. But most importantly, he lost his illusion of who he was. For years, he believed he was the successful man, the protective son, the loving husband. And it was all a lie. He was a puppet, an instrument in someone else's hands. That revelation destroyed him in ways money couldn't fix. He kept going to therapy. He called me every week. At first, just to apologize. Then, to tell me about his process. "The therapist says I have codependency," he told me one day. "That all my life I've sought external validation. First from Dad, then from you, then from Chloe. I never learned to validate myself. And now I'm learning. It's painful, but necessary." One day, almost a year after everything, Michael showed up at my loft unannounced. He brought a handwritten letter. "I don't want you to read it in front of me," he said, "but I need you to have it. It's everything I never knew how to say. Everything I should have said years ago." The letter was 12 pages long. I read it that night, alone on my terrace. I cried through every paragraph. Michael acknowledged everything. His cowardice, his blindness, how he chose the comfort of believing lies over the discomfort of facing truths. How he failed me not just as a son, but as a human being. But he also spoke of change, of how he was rebuilding himself, of the mistakes he would never make again, of the promise to be better, not to win me back, but to respect himself. He ended with a line that broke me. "You don't expect your forgiveness, Mom. I just hope that one day, when you think of me, you don't just see the son who betrayed you, but the man who learned too late, but learned nonetheless." I put that letter in a special drawer next to the photos of Richard, the things that hurt, but that you need to keep. Did I forgive Michael? I asked myself that 1,000 times. The answer isn't simple, because forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process. Some days, I forgave him completely. Other days, the anger returned, and I wondered how he could have been so blind. But what I did do was give him space. Space to grow, to change, to prove with actions, not words, that he was different. And slowly, very slowly, something rebuilt between us. Not the relationship from before. That was dead. But something new, more honest, more fragile, yes, but also more real. As for Chloe, the legal end came 14 months after it began. The judge ruled in my favor on everything. She had to return the $89,000 plus interest, a total of $104,700. She sold everything she had: jewelry, designer clothes, the car she bought with my money. She didn't go to prison, but she was left with a criminal record, attempted fraud. Any future employment, any legal application would carry that mark. The last I heard of her, she was working in a call center, living with a cousin in a cramped apartment. Her Instagram, once full of photos at expensive restaurants and on trips, was now private. She had fallen, hard. And while part of me knew I should feel compassion, I couldn't. Because she didn't just steal money from me. She stole years, peace, dignity. So yes, it was poetic justice. Everyone ended up exactly where their actions led them. Brenda, alone in her rooftop room. Chloe, with her reputation destroyed and her future limited. Michael, working on himself, facing who he had been. And me, I was rebuilt, with my studio up and running, with 3 young architects under my mentorship, with projects that excited me, with my friends back. With Arthur visiting every week to go to museums and concerts, with a life that was finally my own. One afternoon, Danielle, my most talented apprentice, asked me while we were reviewing blueprints, "Eleanor, how did you manage to get back up after everything that happened?" I looked at her, 26 years old, her whole life ahead of her, and I remembered the 26-year-old Eleanor, designing her first building, believing the world was just. "You don't get up all at once," I told her. "You get up little by little, first your knees, then your hands, then your head, and one day you realize you're standing, and the scars didn't make you weaker. They made you wiser." She smiled and kept working. And I did too. Because that's what we survivors do. We keep going. We build. We create. Because the best revenge isn't the other person's punishment. It's your own reclaimed happiness. And I, Eleanor Vance, 65-year-old architect, was finally happy. Not in spite of what I lived through, but because I survived it. Because I chose to fight. Because I remembered who I was before they told me who I had to be. That night, the wine spilled on my dress marked an end, but also a beginning. The beginning of a woman who reclaimed her voice, her space, her life, and that is priceless. It's been 2 years since that birthday night. 2 years that feel like another lifetime. I'm sitting on the terrace of my loft. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun is just peeking out between the downtown buildings. I have my strong coffee, the way I've always liked it. Soft music in the background. And in front of me, the blueprints for our new project, a community library in an underserved community. It doesn't pay much, but it's going to change the lives of hundreds of children, and that's worth more than any corporate high-rise. Danielle, Robert, and Carmen, my 3 young architects, arrive at 9. We work until 3, Then I take the afternoons off. To live, to walk, to remind myself that life isn't just work. On Wednesdays, I see Arthur. Yesterday, we went to the Modern Art Museum. We saw the Rodin exhibit. We argued about proportions and beauty. Then we ate at a small restaurant in the neighborhood. He paid. I paid for dessert, owing nothing to anyone, asking no one's permission. On Fridays, I have dinner with Sylvia and 3 other friends from college. Women my age who have also lived, who have also survived divorces, betrayals, losses. We laugh, we drink wine, we tell stories with no filter. And Sundays. Sundays are for Michael. At first they were brief, awkward calls, filled with heavy silences. But little by little, something grew. Not a mother's blind love, but mutual respect, raw honesty. 3 weeks ago, Michael got a new job. At a smaller company, without the prestige of his old one, but with real values. He called me, excited. "Mom, can I come over and tell you about it?" He came by that afternoon. He brought pastries from the bakery we used to like. We sat on the terrace. He told me about the position, about his boss, who values honest work, about how it feels to be building something real. "I'm proud of you, son." His eyes filled with tears. "Really? Truly? Not because of the job, because of the man you're becoming. It's not perfect. There are still days when I see shadows of the son who failed me, but I also see light, genuine effort, real change. Have we healed completely? No. And maybe we never will, entirely, because some wounds leave permanent scars. But we've learned to live with those scars, to respect them, to not pretend they don't exist. Last month, Michael asked if he could take me to dinner, to an elegant restaurant. "I want to celebrate your birthday the way it should have been 2 years ago," he said. I accepted, but with conditions. Nothing flashy, nothing that pretends to erase the past. Just a dinner, you and me, honest. We went to a small place in a quiet neighborhood. Traditional food, pot roast, mashed potatoes, homemade bread. "Are you happy, Mom?" he asked me in the middle of dinner. The question took me by surprise, not because I didn't know the answer, but because no one had asked me that in years. "Yes, son, I'm happy. In spite of everything?" "No, because of everything. Because everything I lived through brought me here, and here is a good place." He smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "I'm glad. You deserve it." That night, walking back home, I thought about Richard. How he would have handled all this. He probably would have seen the signs earlier. He would have protected Michael from Chloe. But I also thought that maybe this needed to happen, so that I could remember who I was, so that Michael could learn who he wanted to be. The hardest lessons are the ones that transform us the most. My studio is doing well. We have 3 active projects, small but significant. An eco-friendly house in the mountains, the community library, and the renovation of a historic tenement building downtown. Danielle is shining. Robert found his voice in sustainable design. Carmen discovered her passion is universal accessibility. I watch them grow, and I see myself 40 years ago, with that hunger, that hope, that certainty that architecture can change lives. And I teach them not just technique, I teach them to defend their space, to not let anyone steal their voice. Especially the young women. Don't let them tell you you're too much, I tell them. Too old, too young, too sensitive, too tough. You are exactly what you need to be. One afternoon, after a difficult meeting with a client who didn't want to hear ideas from an older lady, Danielle watched me defend our design with solid arguments until the client caved. "How do you do that?" she asked me later. "How do you not get intimidated?" "Because I have nothing left to prove. I'm not looking for approval anymore. I'm just looking to do good work. And when you know your own value, no one can take it from you." A month ago, I got an unexpected call. It was the dean of the university's School of Architecture. "Mrs. Vance, we're organizing a lecture series on pioneering women in architecture. We would love for you to participate." I accepted. I gave the lecture 2 weeks ago. A full auditorium, young students, bright eyes, ready to change the world. I told them my story. Not just the buildings I designed, but also what I lived through. The loss, the betrayal, the reconstruction. I thought that at 64, my life was over, I told them. But it turns out, the most interesting part was just beginning. At the end, a girl in her 20s approached me. She had tears in her eyes. My grandmother is going through something similar, with her family. She feels finished. Can I show her this lecture? Please do. And tell her for me that it's never too late to reclaim yourself. That age doesn't define your worth. That as long as you're breathing, you can change your story. Those moments. Those are what remind me why it was worth fighting. Not just for me, but for all the women who believe that after a certain age, they must become invisible, compliant, silent. No. 1,000 times, no. This morning, while making my coffee, I saw myself in the mirror. I'm 65 years old. Gray hair that I no longer dye, wrinkles that tell stories, hands that built buildings and are now building new dreams. And I liked what I saw. Not the perfect Eleanor, not the self-sacrificing mother, not the broken victim, but the complete Eleanor, with all her facets, her scars, her victories, the woman who lost almost everything and rebuilt herself from the foundations up. The doorbell rings. It's Arthur. Today we're going to see an exhibit on Japanese architecture. Ready for an adventure? He asks with that warm smile. Always, I reply. And it's true. I'm ready. Not just for today, but for all the days to come. Because I learned something fundamental in these last 2 years. Life doesn't end when others decide you're no longer relevant. Life begins when you decide that you are. At 65, I didn't finish my story. I rewrote it. In my own handwriting, with my own rules, with my own dignity. And this version, this Eleanor, reborn from the ashes of humiliation, is the best I've ever been. Not because she's perfect, but because she is authentically mine. I walk out of my loft. The sun is shining on the city. There's noise, movement, life, and I am part of it. Not as a spectator, but as the protagonist. Because that's what we women who survive are, the protagonists of our own stories. And my story, far from ending that night of the spilled wine, was just beginning its most beautiful chapter. The chapter where I chose, where I built, where I flourished. At 65 years old, without asking permission, without apologizing for existing, simply being, complete, free, alive. And that is what it truly means to be reborn. The doorbell to my loft rings on a Sunday afternoon. I'm not expecting anyone. Arthur is out of town visiting his daughter in Dallas. My friends are confirmed for Friday. The team from the studio doesn't work on Sundays. I open the door, and my heart stops for a second. It's Michael. But he's not carrying flowers or gifts. He's carrying something different in his hands. A thick manila envelope. And on his face, there's an expression I haven't seen before. Determination mixed with fear. Mom, can I come in? I need to show you something. Of course, son. He sits in the living room, not on the sofa where he usually sits, but on the edge, like someone about to jump. He places the envelope on the coffee table. I've been working on this for the last 6 months. With my therapist. Alone. Without pressure from anyone. He opens the envelope, pulls out papers. Lots of papers. This is a restitution plan. His voice trembles slightly. Not just the money we already paid back by court order, but everything. Every dollar I spent. Beyond that, every decision I made without consulting you. Every moment I should have defended you and didn't. He shows me spreadsheets. Detailed calculations. Dates. Amounts. It's an additional $34,000. Expenses I authorized. Dinners. Trips. Things I thought were normal, but that came from your account. I'm going to pay it all back. It will take me 3 years with my current salary, but I'm going to do it. The tears threaten to come, but I hold them back. Michael, the judge didn't order that. You've already complied legally. It's not about what's legal, Mom. It's about what's right. He looks me straight in the eye for the first time in a long time. I spent a year in therapy learning the difference. Legal is the minimum. Right is what lets you sleep at night. There's something else in the envelope. He takes it out with trembling hands, and this This is the hardest part. It's a letter, but not for me. It's for the American Institute of Architects. I asked them to nominate you for the Lifetime Achievement Award. I told them about your buildings, your projects, your mentorship, everything you've done that I never knew how to value. My throat closes. Son, I'm not done. He pulls out a notebook. This is my therapy journal. I want you to read it. All of it. The ugly parts, where I admit my codependency, my cowardice, how I let myself be manipulated because it was easier than thinking for myself. He places the notebook in my hands. I don't expect this to change anything between us. I don't expect you to forgive me any faster. I just need you to know that I'm doing the work. The real work. Not to get you back, but to be the man Dad would have wanted me to be. Silence. Long, heavy, but not uncomfortable. Can I say something now? I ask softly. He nods, his eyes glassy. I don't need you to pay me back every dollar, Michael. I don't need grand gestures. What I need is exactly what you're doing. Honesty. Personal work. Real change. But I want to do it. I need to do it. Then I accept. But on one condition. What? That money, when you save it, you use it for your therapy. To keep working on yourself. Because that is the best restitution you can give me. A healthy son. A son with integrity. He breaks. Completely. He puts his head in his hands and sobs. Not like a composed adult, but like a child finally letting it all out. I move closer. I put my hand on his shoulder. I don't hug him. Not yet. But I sit with him in his sorrow. Because that's what we are now. Not a savior mother and a lost son, but two adults learning to relate to each other from a place of truth, from respect, from the difficult work of rebuilding what was broken. Words are easy, Michael. It's the deeds that build bridges. I know. That's why I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. And I'll keep showing you. Every month. Every year. However long it takes. He lifts his head. Wipes his tears. Am I still invited for Sunday dinner? I ask. If you'll have me, I'll have you. But from now on, you bring dessert. And you tell me one true thing about your week. Not the pretty stuff. The real stuff. He smiles. A small but genuine smile. It's a deal. Before he leaves, he pauses at the door. Mom, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me. For setting boundaries. For forcing me to grow up, even though it hurt. Because if you had forgiven me easily, if you had let everything go back to the way it was, I never would have changed. I'd still be that weak man who let his mother be abused. Boundaries aren't punishment, son. They're love. Real love protects. And sometimes protecting means saying no. He nods. He leaves. I'm left alone with the manila envelope, the restitution plan, the journal, the letter to the Institute. I read the journal that night. Not all of it. Just parts. I see his pain, his shame, his real work to understand how he became who he was. And for the first time in 2 years, I feel something I thought was lost. Hope. Not that everything will go back to the way it was, but that we can build something new, something better, something based on truth, not fantasy. 3 weeks later, I get an email from the American Institute of Architects. I've been nominated, not just for my professional career, but for my mentorship work with young architects. I cry reading that email, not from sadness, from pure joy, because someone saw, someone valued it. The ceremony is in 2 months. They invite me to bring guests. I invite Arthur. I invite Sylvia. I invite Danielle, Robert, and Carmen. And yes, I invite Michael. Are you sure? He asks when I call him. I'm sure. You're my son, and I want you to see what I built when I finally stopped making myself small so others could feel big. The day of the ceremony, I wear a wine-colored dress. Elegant but comfortable. Heels I can walk in. My hair is down, my silver grays shining under the lights. Michael arrives early to pick me up. He's wearing a suit. He looks good. But more importantly, he looks at peace. In the car, he says, I'm proud of you, Mom. I always should have been. but I was too busy pretending to be someone I wasn't to see who you really were. Thank you, son. That means a lot. The ceremony is beautiful. They give me the award. I speak in front of hundreds of people. I tell my story, not just the buildings, the fall and the rebirth. To all the women here tonight, I say in my closing remarks, especially those who feel their best years are behind them, I am here to tell you that you are wrong. Your best time is now. It is always now. As long as you have a voice, use it. As long as you have strength, fight. As long as you have life, live. Not for others. For yourselves. The ovation is long, emotional. Afterward, at the reception, Michael approaches with a glass of juice in his hand. Do you remember that night with the wine? He asks. How could I forget? I thought that was your end, your lowest moment. But it turns out it was your beginning, your awakening. Sometimes endings are just beginnings in disguise. Do you think someday we can? He doesn't finish the question. Be a family again? We are a family, Michael. We just have a real one now. With boundaries, with respect, with truth. And that's better than the fantasy we had before, he smiles. We toast, with juice, not wine, because some symbols need to be rewritten. I returned to my loft that night, tired but happy. I put the award on the bookshelf, next to the photos of Richard, next to the blueprints of my first building, and I look at everything I've built. Not just concrete structures, but a life. My life. A life I almost lost, but that I won back with tooth and nail, with tears and work, with boundaries and dignity. I sit on my terrace. The city sparkles below. Millions of lights, millions of stories. And mine. My story is one of resilience, of transformation, of a woman who refused to be invisible. I think of all the women who are going through what I went through, feeling worthless, feeling their time is over, that they must settle for the crumbs of respect others give them. And I want to scream to them. No, you are worthy. You matter. You deserve dignity. And it is never, ever too late to reclaim it. Because I did. At 64, when the world told me it was too late, I decided I was just getting started, and I was right. Life doesn't end when others decide you're no longer useful. Life begins when you decide you are invaluable. I close my eyes, take a deep breath, and smile. Because true wealth isn't in what you own. It's in what you refuse to let anyone take from you. And I got back the most valuable things. My dignity, my voice, my life. And no one will ever take them from me again. If this story touched your heart, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had to set difficult boundaries to get your peace back. Give this a like if you believe dignity has no age. And subscribe to keep following more life stories like this one. Because all the stories we share here have something in common. They remind us that as long as we are breathing, we can rewrite our ending. The end.